Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into just 4 powerful verses in the book of Acts. But wow, they really pack a punch. We're going to see how a story that starts with one person's solitude quickly transforms into a powerful lesson on solidarity and strategy.
So our story kicks off with this really simple, almost blunt statement. It sets this lonely tone, you know? You can just picture it, one of history's most important figures, on the move again, all by himself, heading from one big city to another.
I mean, who hasn't, right? And that exact feeling of isolation is where this whole story begins. It's what makes a giant historical figure like the Apostle Paul so relatable. He's not just some name in a book. He's a real person facing a massive challenge, and he's doing it alone. Okay, so let's really set the scene here. To get what's happening, you have to understand the world Paul just walked into. This wasn't just any old town. This was Corinth. So Paul leaves Athens, right? The city of philosophers, big ideas, and lots of debate. And he lands in Corinth. Now, Corinth was a whole different animal. It was this bustling, cosmopolitan port city, a major commercial crossroads famous for its wealth, its diversity, and, well, let's just say its pretty loose morals. And here's what's so interesting: the context. Paul even says later that he likely arrived in weakness and in fear. Think about it. His time in Athens didn't exactly go smashingly, and now he's all alone facing this huge new challenge. This is a really critical, really vulnerable moment for him and his mission.
But right here, at what seems like a low point, the whole story just pivots. A seemingly random encounter is about to change, well, pretty much everything for Paul and for the future of the church in Corinth. In this massive, chaotic city, he finds 2 people, Aquila and his wife Priscilla. And listen, these 2 are not just some minor characters in the story. They become crucial, lifelong partners in his ministry. The narrative instantly shifts from isolation to connection.
And this is just brilliant. You see how a huge political event, hundreds of miles away in Rome, ends up setting the stage for what feels like a divine setup in Corinth. The emperor's decree forces Aquila and Priscilla out of the capital, and it just so happens to place them in the perfect city at the perfect time for Paul's arrival.
And that's the key, right? Their meeting wasn't just some happy accident. It's what we call a providential encounter, a moment that seems like a coincidence, but is really God at work, ending Paul's solitude and giving his mission exactly what it needed to get off the ground.
So this partnership, it leads us straight into the first pillar of Paul's strategy in Corinth. And it's all built on the common ground he shared with his new friends.
Turns out they were all in the same business. They were tent makers, or you could say more broadly, leather workers. This shared job gave Paul way more than just a paycheck and a place to live. It became a foundational strategy for his entire ministry there.
And you've got to understand, this was a deliberate choice, and it had huge implications. By funding his own way, Paul was protecting the integrity of the gospel. No one could accuse him of being in it for the money, especially in a city obsessed with commerce. It also modeled an amazing work ethic for new believers. And maybe most importantly, it removed any financial barrier for people who wanted to hear the message. It was a strategy rooted in humility. So with his practical needs met and a team at his side, Paul immediately kicked off the second pillar of his strategy, a really consistent, methodical way of reaching out to the community.
Every single week, like clockwork, he followed this plan. He'd go to the synagogue on the Sabbath. Why? Because he was starting on common ground, with an audience of both Jews and God-fearing Greeks who already knew the Old Testament scriptures.
And check this out. Notice that word, reasoning. The Greek word is dialegomai. Sound familiar? It's where we get our word dialogue. See, his goal wasn't to just preach at people. It was to engage their minds, to discuss, to debate, and to build this rational, scriptural bridge from what they already believed to the message of the gospel.
So when you put all these pieces together, the arrival in a tough city, the God-sent partners, the self-funding job, and the consistent outreach, what you get is a timeless blueprint for how to do impactful ministry. And getting this backstory is absolutely key.
The friendships he formed and the challenges he faced right here in Corinth, well, that's the essential context for understanding everything he writes in his famous letters, 1st and 2nd Corinthians. It all makes so much more sense.
So Paul's blueprint can kind of become our own. First, it's a reminder that mission is not a solo sport. We need to find our partners, our own Aquila and Priscilla. Second, we use the practical skills we already have, our tent making, to build credibility and support the work. And third, we just commit to being consistent, to showing up again and again where we're called.
And so this ancient story leaves us with a really modern challenge. It kind of invites us to look at our own lives and ask a couple of big questions. What is the complex, challenging environment, my Corinth, that I've been placed in? And who are the providential partners God has already put in my path to help me navigate it?